I was 2 minutes late. 2 minutes. And the next day, I lost everything I'd built over 6 years. They thought they were just cutting another number from their payroll before the big IPO. What they didn't know was that I'd written the code for their entire administrative platform. And I knew exactly how to make it all collapse on the one day they needed stability the most. My name is Rachel Quinn, and until 3 weeks ago, I was a senior software engineer at Alteryx Technologies in Denver. 34 years old, 6 years with the company. Not a single performance issue on record. I'd pulled all-nighters during product launches, sacrificed weekends to fix critical bugs, and built half their infrastructure from scratch. But none of that mattered on March 15th, when I clocked in at 9:02 a.m. instead of 9 a.m. The termination email arrived at 4:47 p.m. that same day. No meeting, no conversation, no chance to explain that I'd been stuck behind a 5-car pileup on I-25. Just a cold, automated message from HR with Valerie Stokes CC'd, my direct manager who'd smiled at me that morning and asked about my weekend plans. Due to repeated violations of company attendance policy, your employment with Alteryx Technologies is terminated effective immediately. Repeated violations? I read it 3 times, certain there was a mistake. I'd been late exactly once in 6 years. Once. Today. My hands shook as I scrolled through my email history, searching for any previous warnings. Nothing. I checked my performance reviews. All exceeds expectations. I even pulled up my clock-in records from the past year. Perfect attendance, minus today's 2-minute delay. I remember sitting in my car in the parking garage, laptop bag heavy on my shoulder, security badge already deactivated. The tears came then, not from losing the job, but from the sheer cruelty of it. 6 years of dedication reduced to nothing by an algorithm that measured human worth in minutes and seconds. The real knife twist came the next morning. My friend Jared, who still worked in IT, texted me a screenshot of the internal announcement. Alteryx was moving forward with their IPO plans, scheduled for April 20th. The executive team would receive substantial bonuses upon successful completion. The memo mentioned streamlining operations and optimizing human resources in preparation for going public. That's when I understood. I wasn't fired for being 2 minutes late. I was fired because my $130,000 salary could pad someone else's IPO bonus. They needed to show reduced operational costs to make the numbers look better for investors. And I was just a line item to be erased. But they'd made one critical mistake. In their rush to cut costs, they'd forgotten who built their systems. Who knew every backdoor, every vulnerability, every piece of legacy code still running in production? They'd forgotten that DataStream, their flagship platform they'd showcased to investors, still ran on architecture I'd designed 3 years ago. I stared at that IPO announcement, and something cold settled in my chest. They wanted to play with numbers? Fine. I'd show them what happens when you reduce people to data points. I still had my old development notes, my personal copies of the codebase, and most importantly, I remembered every single temporary fix I'd implemented under pressure, the kind that works perfectly until someone triggers very specific conditions. They thought they were just firing employee 20847. They had no idea they'd just declared war on the architect of their digital empire. Alteryx loved to parade itself as the most human-centric tech company in Colorado. Their lobby walls were plastered with motivational quotes about empathy, work-life balance, and putting people first. Every quarterly meeting started with Valerie Stokes preaching about transparency and respect. She'd stand there in her $3,000 suit, talking about how we're more than employees, we're family. Family. Right. The kind of family that monitors your bathroom breaks and times your lunch down to the second. The truth behind those frosted glass doors was different. We had unlimited PTO, which meant nobody took vacation because there was no official allocation to use up. And taking time off was seen as not being a team player. We had flexible hours, as long as you were flexible enough to work 60-hour weeks during crunch time. We had open communication, except when you questioned why the C-suite got 7-figure bonuses while engineering hadn't seen raises in 2 years. I remember one December evening, working until 2 a.m. to fix a critical bug. Valerie had stormed into the office at 6 p.m., demanding we resolve it before the Asian markets opened. No extra pay, no comp time, just her standing behind us, sighing dramatically every few minutes. When we finally fixed it, she took full credit in the executive meeting. I know because the meeting minutes were accidentally left on the printer. That was Valerie's specialty, stealing credit while maintaining plausible deniability. She'd ask you to collaborate on a project, contribute one useless suggestion, then present it to the board as her innovation. My dynamic caching system that saved the company $2 million annually, presented as Valerie's optimization initiative. The API framework that became the backbone of DataStream, developed under Valerie's strategic leadership. But I stayed. We all stayed. Because Alteryxin paid just enough to keep you trapped, especially in Denver's inflated market. They calculated it perfectly, high enough that you couldn't easily find better, low enough that you couldn't build real security. 3 months before my termination, I'd stumbled onto something interesting. While debugging a payroll system issue, I noticed a pattern. Every quarter, right before earnings reports, there would be a wave of terminations. Always people making over $100K. Always for minor infractions, 5 minutes late. A misformatted report, using the wrong cover sheet on TPS reports. The positions would remain empty until after the quarterly call, then filled with junior developers at half the salary. It was surgical, deliberate, and completely legal because Colorado's at-will employment meant they didn't need a real reason. I'd even tried to warn others. During a coffee break, I mentioned the pattern to a few colleagues. They looked at me like I was wearing a tinfoil hat. "You're being paranoid, Rachel. Alteryxin takes care of us." 2 of those colleagues were gone within 6 months. Minor infractions, of course. The real kicker? I found out later that my position was posted on LinkedIn the day before I was fired. They'd already interviewed candidates. That 2-minute delay wasn't a reason, it was an excuse they'd been waiting for. Jared told me they'd replace me with 2 junior developers from their apprenticeship program, basically unpaid interns doing senior-level work for experience and mentorship. My entire workload, split between 2 kids fresh out of boot camp, probably making $40K out each if they were lucky. But here's what Valerie didn't know. I'd been the only one maintaining the legacy authentication system. The documentation was, let's say, incomplete. And those 2 juniors, they had no idea that certain database triggers I'd written were held together by very specific conditions. Change one variable, push one wrong update, and the whole authentication system would cascade into failure. They thought they were so clever, trimming the fat before their big payday. They had no idea they'd just fired the person who knew where all the bodies were buried in their codebase. The first week after termination, I couldn't get out of bed. Not depression exactly, more like a complete system shutdown. My entire identity had been wrapped up in being Rachel Quinn, Senior Software Engineer. Without that title, who was I? Just another unemployed developer in a city full of them. The rejection emails started rolling in by day 3. We've decided to move forward with other candidates. Your skills don't align with our current needs. Translation, you're damaged goods. Word travels fast in Denver's tech scene. One day you're a respected engineer, the next, you're radioactive. Nobody wants to hire someone who got fired, especially from a company preparing for IPO. My savings account became a ticking time bomb. $12,000 seemed like a lot until you factored in $2,100 monthly rent, student loans, car payment, health insurance through Cobra at $890 a month. I did the math obsessively. 3 months, maybe 4 if I ate nothing but ramen and canceled everything non-essential. The house down payment I'd been saving for? Gone. The dream of stability? Evaporated. I canceled the viewing appointment with the realtor. Ignored her cheerful voicemails asking if I wanted to reschedule. How do you explain that your entire future just got deleted by a 2-minute traffic delay? At night, I'd lie awake running through every interaction with Valerie, looking for signs. Had I missed something? Said the wrong thing? But no, I'd been the perfect employee. Quiet, productive, never complaining even when they piled on impossible deadlines. I'd drunk the Kool-Aid, believed that hard work and loyalty meant something. One particularly bad night, I pulled out my laptop and started scrolling through my old code repositories. 5 years of work. Millions of lines of code. Systems that processed billions in transactions. All built by these hands. This brain they deemed worthless. That's when I found it. Buried in my personal notes. A complete documentation of DataStream's authentication protocol. I'd written it during a particularly brutal crunch period when Valerie demanded we skip proper documentation to meet her arbitrary deadline. "We'll document it later," she'd said. Later never came. I stared at the code, remembering every late night, every weekend sacrificed. The authentication system was elegant in its complexity, a multi-layered verification process that seemed robust but relied on several interdependent services. If one specific service failed to respond within a precise time frame, it would trigger a cascade of re-authentication attempts. Under normal load, this never happened. But under stress, say, hundreds of investors trying to access a live demo simultaneously, things could get interesting. The beautiful part? It wasn't a bug. It was a feature I'd implemented to prevent DDoS attacks. But without proper documentation. Without understanding the intricate balance, anyone trying to optimize the system would likely disable these safeguards. And I knew Valerie's new juniors would definitely try to optimize. She'd demand it. Why is this old code so complex? Simplify it. I closed the laptop, but the seed was planted. They'd stolen my career, my stability, my faith in the system. They'd reduced 6 years of dedication to a spreadsheet calculation, but they'd forgotten one crucial thing. They'd fired me, not killed me, and I still knew their systems better than anyone else alive. I pulled up Alteryx's investor relations page. April 20th, the IPO demo would be broadcast live to potential investors. DataStream would be the centerpiece, showing real-time processing capabilities. Valerie would be there, taking credit for systems she couldn't even understand. The executives would cash out millions while employees like me were discarded like defective parts. The old Rachel would have walked away, found another job, forgotten about it. But that Rachel had believed in fairness, in karma, in the idea that good work spoke for itself, that Rachel was as dead as my Alteryxin career. The new Rachel. She understood that in corporate America, you were either predator or prey. And I was done being prey. I spent the next 2 weeks becoming a digital archaeologist, excavating every piece of Alteryx's infrastructure from my memory and personal files. Legal? Gray area? Ethical? They'd thrown ethics out the window when they fired me for profit margins. I wasn't accessing their systems, just reviewing my own notes, my own code, work I'd created. The DataStream platform was more vulnerable than they knew, not through any malicious backdoor, but through elegant inefficiencies I'd been forced to implement under Valerie's impossible deadlines. Technical debt, we called it. Code that works, but carries hidden costs. Like a house built on sand, stable until the tide comes in. The key vulnerability lay in the authentication service's load balancer. During peak traffic, it would cycle through backup servers in a specific pattern. If those servers received conflicting timestamp data, say, from someone who knew exactly when to inject specific requests, the system would enter a recursive loop of re-authentication, not enough to crash it under normal circumstances, but during a live demo with hundreds of concurrent users, the cascade effect would be beautiful. I needed help. Not for the technical part, I could handle that alone. But I needed someone still inside to confirm the systems hadn't changed. That's when I thought of Jared. Jared Kim had started at Alteryxin the same week I did. We'd survived countless death marches together, bonded over terrible coffee and Valerie's management style. He'd been pushed out 8 months ago, officially resigned, actually forced out after refusing to work a 7th consecutive weekend. He now worked at a credit union, making half his old salary but home by 5 p.m. every day. I met him at a dive bar in Capitol Hill, far from Alteryxin's low-dough territory. He looked healthier than I'd ever seen him, the bags under his eyes gone. The stress weight melted away. "Rachel fucking Quinn," he said, sliding into the booth. "Heard about what happened. 2 minutes. That's cold, even for them. I bought the first round, then the second. By the third, I laid out my cards. I'm not asking you to do anything illegal," I said carefully. "Just confirm some technical details, architecture stuff, for my portfolio." The last part was a lie, but we both knew it. Jared stared at his beer for a long moment. "You know what Valerie said when I gave notice? You'll never work in Denver tech again. She actually tried to blackball me, sent emails to other CTOs warning them I was difficult. Did it work?" He laughed bitterly. "Partially. That's why I'm processing loan applications instead of building systems." He took a long pull of his beer. "What do you need to know?" I pulled out my notebook. Old school, no digital trail. "The authentication load balancer, they still using the same rotation pattern?" "Far as I know, my buddy Marcus still works overnight shifts. Says they haven't touched the legacy systems, too scared of breaking something before IPO. "And the timestamp synchronization?" "Still using NTP with the same offset configuration you set up. The juniors tried to fix it last month, caused a 12-hour outage. Valerie screamed at them to never touch it again." "Perfect. They were protecting their weakness without understanding it." "Rachel." Jared leaned forward. "Whatever you're thinking." "I'm thinking they destroyed my life over 2 minutes in a spreadsheet calculation. I'm thinking they're about to cash out millions while people like us can barely make rent. I'm thinking about justice." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "The IPO demo is April 20th, 2 p.m. Eastern. They're broadcasting from the main conference room, expecting over 500 institutional investors to stream in simultaneously. Valerie's been bragging about it for weeks." "How do you know that?" "Marcus. They've got the whole engineering team on standby that day. No vacations approved. They're terrified something will go wrong." He smiled grimly. "Guess their fears are justified. I didn't need to inject malicious code. I didn't need to hack anything. I just needed to be one of those 500 viewers making specific API calls at specific moments. The beautiful irony, I'd be using their own public demo system against them. Everything traceable to random IP addresses from VPN endpoints. Digital karma delivered through the very systems I'd built." "You were never here," I told Jared. "We never had this conversation." "What conversation?" He raised his glass. "To 2-minute windows of opportunity." We clinked glasses. In 3 weeks, Alteryxin would learn that some debts couldn't be calculated in minutes or dollars. Some came due in ways you never saw coming. April 20th arrived with perfect Denver spring weather. Clear skies, 60 degrees, the Rockies visible in sharp relief against the horizon. Somewhere in Lodo, in Alteryxin's gleaming conference room, executives were adjusting their ties and practicing their smiles. They had no idea their perfect day was about to shatter. I'd prepared meticulously. 3 separate VPN connections, each routing through different countries. Burner laptop purchased with cash from a pawnshop. Mobile hotspot from a prepaid carrier. I wasn't just covering tracks. I was ensuring they'd never existed. At 1:45 p.m. Eastern, I pulled up the investor portal. The live stream showed the conference room filling up, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows, the massive LED displays showing data streams interface. Valerie stood at the podium in a navy suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Behind her, the CEO, CFO, and other executives radiated confident greed. The investor chat was already active. Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Blackstone, all the heavy hitters were logged in. The stakes couldn't be higher. This demo would determine Alteryxin's initial valuation. Billions of dollars hinged on the next hour. At 1:58 p.m., I initiated my sequence. Not an attack, just a user accessing the demo system. Perfectly legitimate. The first query hit the authentication server, requesting access with a timestamp precisely calibrated to conflict with the server's rotation schedule. Nothing happened yet. "Welcome, everyone. to the future of data processing. Valerie's voice came through clear and smug. What you're about to see is data stream in action, handling real-time analytics at unprecedented scale. She clicked to the first slide, live dashboard showing system metrics. Everything green, everything perfect. I sent the second query, then the third, each time to hit during the millisecond gap when servers handed off authentication duties. Still nothing visible, the system absorbed the anomalies like it was designed to. But deep in the logs, timestamps were starting to conflict. As you can see, Valerie continued, we're currently processing over 10,000 transactions per second with zero latency. That's when I triggered the cascade. 50 simultaneous authentication requests, each crafted to hit a different server in the rotation. The load balancer, faced with conflicting timestamps from what it perceived as the same user session, did exactly what I'd programmed it to do 3 years ago. It tried to re-authenticate all 50 sessions simultaneously. The first sign of trouble was a slight stutter in the dashboard metrics. Numbers freezing for half a second. Valerie didn't notice, but I saw the lead engineer in the background suddenly lean forward, fingers flying over his laptop. DataStream's revolutionary architecture ensures. Valerie stopped mid-sentence. The dashboard had frozen completely. Then the numbers started climbing. 100,000 transactions per second, 500,000, 1 million. Not real transactions, authentication loops reproducing exponentially. The CEO stepped forward, whispering urgently in Valerie's ear. She maintained her smile, but I could see the panic in her eyes. Just a moment, folks. We're experiencing a slight display issue. Display issue. Right. Behind her. The engineering team was in full crisis mode. I knew what they were seeing, thousands of recursive authentication attempts overwhelming the system. Every attempt to kill the process spawned 10 more. The elegant trap I'd inadvertently built years ago, now springing shut. The investor chat exploded. Is this normal? Seems like a significant failure. Perhaps not ready for production. Then came the killing blow. The main display flickered and showed an error message I'd coded myself during a particularly frustrating debugging session. Fatal error, cascading authentication failure. Someone forgot to document this properly. Good luck. Valerie's face went white. In the background, someone shouted, the whole system's locked. We can't even access the admin panel. The CEO grabbed the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing temporary technical difficulties. We'll reconvene. But the investors were already leaving the stream. The chat filled with variations of concerning, not ready, and reconsidering our position. One Goldman Sachs analyst simply wrote, pass. I watched for another 5 minutes as panic consumed the conference room. Engineers screaming at each other. Valerie gesturing wildly. The CEO on his phone, probably watching millions in valuation evaporate with each passing second. Then I closed the laptop, wiped it down, removed the hard drive. In an hour, it would be in pieces at the bottom of different dumpsters across Denver. The VPN subscriptions paid with cryptocurrency that couldn't be traced. The mobile hotspot already factory reset and destined for electronic recycling. They'd investigate, of course. Hire forensic analysts, security experts, consultants. They'd find exactly what I wanted them to find. Nothing. Just a system pushed beyond its limits at the worst possible moment. A perfect storm of bad timing and technical debt. The authentication system would recover eventually. In about 6 hours, once the recursive loops exhausted themselves. But, by then, the damage would be done. The tech blogs would already be writing about Alteryx's spectacular IPO failure. The memes would be spreading. The investors would be looking elsewhere. All because someone decided that 2 minutes was worth more than 6 years of loyalty. By Monday morning, Alteryx was front-page news on every tech blog. IPO implosion. Denver startup crashes during live demo. Data stream disaster. Investors flee after technical meltdown. TechCrunch ran a particularly brutal piece with the headline, How to Lose $1 Billion in 30 Minutes. The security postmortem found nothing. How could it? Every request had been legitimate, using their own public demo system. The official report blamed an unfortunate cascade of system interactions under unprecedented load. Corporate speak for, "We have no fucking clue what happened." But the damage went far beyond one failed demo. The SEC announced an investigation into Alteryx's technical capabilities and disclosure practices. Turns out claiming revolutionary architecture while running on untested legacy code might constitute misleading investors. Who would have thought? Jared texted me screenshots from the internal Slack. Pure chaos. The board had called an emergency meeting. Fingers pointing in every direction. The CTO blamed infrastructure. Infrastructure blamed development. Everyone blamed Valerie for pushing unstable code to production. Then came the best part. A leaked email from the CEO to the board. Someone, probably a bitter employee watching their stock options evaporate, sent it to the Denver Post. In it, he threw Valerie under the bus completely. Ms. Stokes assured us the systems were production-ready. Her failure to properly assess technical risks has cost us tremendously. By Wednesday, Valerie was gone. Pursuing other opportunities, the press release said. Her LinkedIn showed her taking a sabbatical to focus on personal growth. Translation: radioactive in the tech community. No company preparing for IPO would touch her. The exodus began immediately. Senior engineers, product managers, anyone with options worth anything, they all jumped ship. Why stay on a sinking vessel? The juniors they'd hired to replace people like me, overwhelmed and undertrained. They couldn't maintain the systems without documentation only the original developers understood. Marcus, Jared's friend, sent word that they'd brought in consultants to stabilize data stream. The consultants' first recommendation? Hire back the senior engineers they'd terminated. The irony was delicious. They'd have to offer double, triple salaries to convince anyone to return to that dumpster fire. The venture capital firms started circling like vultures. When a company's valuation drops 70% overnight, it becomes an acquisition target. The founders would be forced to sell for pennies on the dollar. Those multi-million-dollar executive bonuses tied to the IPO? Gone. Converted to equity in whatever larger company absorbed Alteryx's corpse. Local news picked up the story when Alteryx announced restructuring, corporate speak for mass layoffs. The same company that had fired me over 2 minutes was now terminating 40% of its workforce. No severance, stock options worthless, just pink slips and cardboard boxes. I watched from a coffee shop downtown as former colleagues streamed out of the building, carrying their possessions. Some were crying, others looked relieved. Most just seemed stunned. They'd believed in the company, in the mission, in the promise of IPO riches. Now they were learning what I'd learned. Loyalty in corporate America only flows upward. The final nail came 2 weeks later. Alteryx's largest client, citing concerns about platform stability, terminated their contract. Without that revenue, Alteryx couldn't make payroll. Emergency board meeting, more leaked emails, talk of bankruptcy. 3 months after firing me for being 2 minutes late. Alteryx Technologies ceased to exist, acquired by a competitor for a fraction of its former valuation. The executives who'd orchestrated the whole scheme? They got nothing. Their shares, their options, their golden parachutes all evaporated in the acquisition. Valerie Stokes? Last I heard, she was working as a consultant, which in Denver tech circles meant unemployable. The CEO moved back to California, his reputation in tatters. The investors who'd pumped millions into Alteryx, they got 10 cents on the dollar. And somewhere in the code repositories of the acquiring company lies data stream, still running on my architecture, still carrying my undocumented features. A digital monument to the danger of treating people like disposable assets. They'd thought they were optimizing their human resources. Instead, they'd optimized themselves out of existence. All for the sake of 2 minutes and a line on a spreadsheet. I never went back to corporate tech. The industry that had defined me for over a decade now felt like a foreign country, one where human value was measured in sprint points and stock options. Instead, I started writing. Not code, but stories. Tales from the Trenches of Startup Culture, published under a pseudonym on Medium and Substack. The 2-Minute Termination. How to Destroy a Unicorn. When Loyalty Becomes a Liability. Each post dissected the casual cruelty of corporate America, the way companies preached family values while treating employees like interchangeable parts. The posts went viral in tech circles. Comments poured in from engineers, designers, project managers, all with their own stories of being discarded for arbitrary reasons. I never revealed my identity. Never claimed credit for Altrixon's downfall. Let them wonder. Let them suspect. Let every executive who considers firing someone over trivial infractions remember that mysterious technical failure that brought down $1 billion IPO. The blog grew into something bigger. A support network for tech workers. A warning system about toxic companies. A reminder that we're more than our productivity metrics. The ad revenue and subscriptions aren't making me rich, but they pay the bills. More importantly, they pay for something money couldn't buy at Altrixon: freedom. I write from coffee shops now, not conference rooms. My deadlines are self-imposed. My boss is my conscience, not some executive chasing quarterly numbers. When I'm 2 minutes late to my favorite cafe, the barista just smiles and starts making my usual order. Sometimes I run into former Altrixon employees around Denver. We nod, maybe exchange knowing looks. We're all survivors of the same shipwreck, scattered across other companies now, carrying hard-learned lessons about corporate loyalty. Jared and I meet for drinks occasionally. He's still at the credit union, got promoted to senior developer, makes less than he would at a startup, but he's home for dinner with his kids every night. "You saved me," he said once, after a few beers. Watching Altrixon implode reminded me what really matters. I didn't correct him. Didn't mention that salvation sometimes comes dressed as revenge. The tech industry hasn't changed. Companies still fire people for manufactured reasons. Executives still cash out while employees get screwed. The machine grinds on, indifferent to the human cost. But maybe, just maybe, some of them think twice now. Maybe they remember Altrixon. Maybe they wonder if their next arbitrary termination will create another ghost in their machine. They taught me that in their world, everything is transactional. Every relationship has a price, every person has a breaking point. They were right. But they miscalculated the exchange rate. They thought they were trading 2 minutes for my $130,000 salary. In reality, they traded 2 minutes for their entire company. And somewhere in the ruins of their ambitions lies the only performance review that ever mattered: terminated for cause. Cause. Forgetting that even cogs in a machine can bring the whole system down. They valued punctuality over people, efficiency over empathy, profits over principles. They optimized their humanity out of the equation and wondered why the algorithm failed. 2 minutes. That's all it took to destroy 6 years of loyalty. And in the end, that's all it took to destroy them. The machine always wins, they said. But they forgot, someone has to build the machine. And the builder always keeps the keys. Thank you so much for listening to this story of corporate revenge. I'm curious, where are you listening from right now? Drop a comment below and let me know what city or country you're in. I love connecting with listeners from around the world. If you enjoyed this tale of justice served cold, please subscribe to the channel for more revenge stories that'll make you think twice about how companies treat their employees. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever experienced unfair treatment at work? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments below. Until next time, remember, sometimes the best revenge is showing them exactly what they lost.